Welcome to the Pixelberry Choices podcast, and today we'll be doing another ranking video, and it's been due since a long time also, alongside some other videos. Those will also be coming in the coming weeks and in February. So here today in this power ranking video, I'll be talking about my top 10 best antagonists or villains in choices. So I have the list ready. I'll go from number 10 to number 1, and then some villains I didn't rank them, who I didn't rank because they still have got sequels, so the stories are still going on. So those are the villains to watch out for. Let me know in the comments your top antagonists or top villains in choices, and why do you think they're the best villains. And also, I try to rank villains not in terms of, yawn, what a lame villain, like, Lexi in Queen Bee, or, Celine, like, not a proper villain, or a villain with whom we get to, like, Kane, we get to impress them, or Poppy, with whom we get to smooch, and kind of get to hook up in romance. But villains, as in the sense, like, this is, like, a really, top-notch villain, like, who is having an impact on the story, and you really hate them, but you need to admire them for keeping the story alive, because they're doing a great job being a good villain, but not a lame villain. Anyway, let's dive right into it with our number 10. Number 10 is Brian Crandall from High School Story. I mean, he is probably the one antagonist character that you will see over a span of 6 books. The original High School Story and the High School Story Class Act. So, Brian started off in the first book as a very loathsome character, antagonist, stealing the best friend's girlfriend, and then no ethics whatsoever, going to the rival school, joining Hearst, and then in book 2, but at the end of book 1, he did come and apologize at the homecoming party, but book 2, even he got worse, when the basketball game. But we didn't see much of him in the book 2 as an antagonist, but in book 3 then, his true nature started showing, like, he even went after Myra and caused a scene in the baseball game, and that was a big embarrassment. But when you thought you finally got rid of Brian, even when you were saying goodbyes at the end, Brian had something in his eyes that was not quite described well. But when High School Story got a spin-off in Class Act with new main characters and love interests, we got Brian's sister's Skye with an E. Her name, Skye. So that was an interesting. Again, Brian became an antagonist as we knew Skye. So Skye's life was made hell by her parents, and because they favored Brian. But also in book 3, we see how Brian was again into the picture, not as the old bad antagonist as in main High School Story originals, but still he had his times when he just showed how loathsome character he is. But I think he's one of the main antagonists who always stuck around there and waited for chances, and doesn't have any characteristics so that anyone can really like or love them. He lost his friend Caleb and the group. But the only reason I think Brian is at number 10 and not high up in the order, whatever he's doing, he's still in high school and in that age period, so it's still not that major, even though he has done a lot of offenses and serious crimes that he could go in jail for. But his parents saved him. But that's about it. Brian, number 10. Number 9, we have Silas from Hero, or Silas, however you want to say his name. So again, he's at number 9 only because Hero did not get a sequel, and I bet you that if Hero had gotten a sequel, Silas would have been way up in the order alongside with Rourke, the antagonist or villain of Endless Summer. Even we knew that Rourke and Silas, they knew each other, so maybe we could have found a connection between them. Now we can only think about that because Hero is cancelled officially, but Silas is a villain because again he is very much like an opportunist and a dreamer. Like he only dreams that he can have the power, the highest power in the world, even though he's the richest person, but he wants more than that. The true power, the power of the crystal. And the way he manipulates everyone and everything around him and ultimately becomes a super villain. I think, if you have watched a lot of hero movies and read some hero stories, so you know that this is how these stories work. And I think Hero was a really unique book, even though there are tons of superhero movies and stories and cartoons are out there, but it was unique. It didn't feel like I'm reading some other hero stories they copied here. But Silas, he was shown as a successful entrepreneur and an ambitious person, but from that slowly we got to know that what is lying inside of him, his mind, like his greed, his ambitions, they are becoming more and more vulnerable and large. And then he wants the ultimate power for him, and he would stop at nothing. Even he wouldn't stop for his own son or whatever is close to him. And again, he had, just like I will talk about Rourke, of course, but he had a same spot. I think he lost his wife, so he wanted that ultimate power that his wife talked about. And after his wife's death, everything started. So you can see like he was a different person, but since her wife died, he wanted to have something more. It kind of caused him that hunger, or that power hunger. It gave birth to that power hunger to him, so that he can control, manipulate everything, and get the highest power that he and his wife dreamt of. Silas, I think we missed one of the best, villain plots and villain origin story. We would have seen more if he had gotten a sequel, but now we can only read it again. But Silas is one of the best villains I've seen in choices. Number 8, Sire from Wolf Bride. And Sire is the main antagonist in this book, Wolf Bride, which is still being released and will get its finale. But how we slowly get to know about Sire, we had the red flags on him when first Lila introduced us to Sire while walking on the street, that this guy's up to no good. But then we slowly get to know that he is a father, not the birth parent, but adopted one of our love interest, Morgan. And then slowly we got even more truths out of him, that how he's trying to destroy the nature and mine the natural origins of wolves that are source of the primal magic, so the natural sources. And he has zero respect for nature and always wants to get the sources out of the nature to sell and profit for himself. But later at the book, around chapter 14, we have the biggest revelation. We heard that Sire's grandfathers broke a deal with the wolves 150 years or so ago, centuries ago. But then we know that it was him all along. He's been alive for that many years, and it was not his grandfather, but it was him, because he's been mining the primal energy and using it for himself. So he has almost become one of them. He can heal himself, and that's how he can be alive for that many years. And also, the biggest revelation he got, our love interest who is blind, but who is one of the lost, Morgan, who is wolf but lost to the pack because she was born blind, but she couldn't shift from human form to wolf form and back, and that's why she didn't know she was one of them. And then finally in chapter 15, I think we came to know that it was Sire all along. He adopted Morgan not because he took pity in a child, not because he wanted to raise Morgan as a daughter. He sucked the primal energy from her to feed off of Morgan and to get what he wanted to accomplish, to heal himself and to benefit himself. And this is perhaps you also see even before this revelation, Sire never cared about Morgan, never treated her as a daughter, and never became the father he wanted to be. I mean, Morgan was blind, but her father never showed the empathy for her, and true, it made her stronger. She became what she is now, but he was never the father figure to Morgan. So definitely Sire is one of the antagonists that makes us like notch off his face, but to be honest, he made the story a lot more interesting. And I wish he had more screen time and we had seen him these revelations in a bit more in a bigger way, like in an extended way, and he had more of a say in this antagonist plot instead of just few chapters. I think that would have been even more interesting. And what the sort of the love triangle, pitting Bastien and Morgan against each other, even when at one point they seem to love each other, care each other as siblings. The next point they're fighting, and then the next point again there's jealousy, and there's no jealousy, there's care. So instead of that love triangle, the trope, if they had focused a bit more after they solved the sibling rivalry, they focused on Sire. I think Sire would have been one of the best antagonists and choices, hands down. At number 7, we have the Admiral of Distant Shores, the Admiral of Royal Navy. So, Distant Shores was like a pirate book, and Admiral was from the Royal Navy. So he had a grudge on the pirates, and specifically against Edward, and they had a long history. Now, we didn't quite get the full history between them, and I don't know, the ending was a bit awkward and unsatisfying, but Admiral was sinister, and he knew about the powers of the compass that basically transported or teleported us from present to the future a couple of centuries ago in a pirate ship. And what the Admiral wanted to do with that compass, and how he loathed the pirates, but what he did for himself as a member of the Royal Navy was not something to praise. And even his own son Oliver, who is also a love interest, goes against him, but he does not even care for his son or anything. Just like a typical antagonist, like he goes for what he sees in it. Again, driven by some wild passion, driven by some wild dreams and big, ambition, and a bit ambiguous. So, Admiral definitely was the main antagonist, and really interesting to, like even if you're having a war of wits or war of swords with him, it was always an interesting match with him. So for me, he's at number 7. Number 6, we have Chief Walls from Veil of Secrets. Now, he's not the main antagonist in that book. Duffy is, but Chief Walls was the villain throughout the book until chapter 13 or 14, when Duffy's revelation was there, or he got arrested. Chief Walls. So Chief Walls, I think, is the first character, or a villain in this interactive stories, who really got under my skin, because every time we will try to come up with a defense for for Kate, or we'll try to collect some clue that she's been kidnapped, and she has been kidnapped, or we need to save her, Chief Walls wouldn't listen to us and will always prioritize, even when Sterling's own son died, he would prioritize their respect over the investigation, and will shut us down, and will all be a pain in our neck. Even they will threaten us to leave the city and from the Birchport and go back to New York. So I think how he treated Duffy and Naomi. He fired Naomi once, and he had his wars with Flynn. I think he had just some exchange with Grant, but not any personal beef because he's a lawyer. But he got under almost everyone's skin, and how he was when we got the revelation. He worked for the illegal business of the Sterling family, and that's why he was trying to keep it hush hush and tried to restrict us from investigating or doing anything further. The Sterling family was one of the antagonists that created the whole problem. Pierre Sterling, Margaret Sterling, Bryce was a jerk, but even Walsh, I think, being the face of law enforcement but not representing them and trying to block everything, hold it at that place for the sake of some particular individual, I think that created loads of problems. So definitely it's Chief Walsh at number 6 from Veil of Secrets. Number 5, we have an ambitious, ancient, old, but a blood-sucking vampire, Gaius. So the way we see Gaius in Bloodbound, I mean, even if you played the holiday special, the solstice one, if you collected all the special scene elements, then you'll get a scene that how he is in an underground city in New York in an underground alley, I think, and talking with his minion about how to plan his next move. So I think if you are talking about a villain, I mean, you can just how his dialogues are written, you can just understand like a deep voiced antagonist talking, and the typical antagonist you watch on TVs and movies, these kind of villains, supernatural powers. And I think he was a force to be reckoned with. And once he was with Camila, who is our love interest, and he was on the good side. But then the whole transition, what became of him and how he became the bad person, why he was killed and why it was needed for him to be killed, and even how he turns out to be at the end, I think, not so much of like a bad villain, always bad, and ends up as a bad person at the end. But he was not the person. He had his resentment, and if you can think of it, like he did change, and it was a different person at the end. So he was not like a loathed character at the end, Gaius. So I think Gaius is one of the best villain-like character, and villain, of course, villain, but also with the full arc. Because lots of times you just see a villain who's a bad character being a bad character and not getting the redemption they want. I'm not saying Gaius got the full redemption, but at least how he was represented, it was a unique approach to a villain or antagonist character. Typical villains are either lame or just one because they want a love or money, they're just fighting for it, and then end up being a villain and just sore losers. Gaius was none of those things, but he was fierce, he was ruthless, he was cutting edge, and he had his flaws. He was, to be honest, he was something to be afraid of. But when you see what happens to him at the end and how he changes and turns out to be not so bad person, but there's good in him. There was a long, long time ago also when he was with Camila. I think there is more to his character that we can see and understand over the centuries, not in just a single time period. So it's just really interesting how Gaius' character was designed, and to be honest, all the Bloodbound characters, because it's not limited over a certain period of time, but it's throughout the century, over a century, not just a century, but over millennia. So it's Gaius at number 5. Number 4, we have the one who has curly hair, the one who is a notorious reality TV show villain, and if you got it right, then kudos, and if you didn't, it's Vince. So Vince, if you see him first at the end of America's Most Eligible Book 1, and then throughout Book 2 and Book 3, specifically at Book 3, he becomes like a pain in the neck. Vince is a character who would you like to punch in the face every time you see him, but I think he was really wonderfully done, and the perfect antagonist needed for a reality TV show. Ivy was an antagonist in book one, but her character redemption was awesome. And on contrary, Vince started as an antagonist and ended as a worse character. Vince's villainous act started even before we started playing America's Most Eligible, because in the season we participated in America's Most Eligible. Before that, Vince, Adam, and Sierra were contestants, and Vince and Adam, they were like brother figures. But then Sierra and Vince, they joined forces and basically snaked on Adam, and that created the bad boy of reality TV show, Adam. And then we see throughout book three how he tries to cheat and how he tries to manipulate his partner, which was Ivy, who were competing against our main character and love interest for the wedding, and how he tries to sell the symbols of love for money, how he tries to sell everything and just spin webs of lies and fraud, and just whiny little baby he becomes at some points. I think Vince was a really fun and very low-thread antagonist, and America's Most Eligible, there's no reality TV show with a, villain like Vince. So I think he just added the drama to America's Most Eligible and definitely deserved to be at number 4. Number 3 is Ansel from Heist Monaco. Ansel, our team member who betrayed us because he thought that he was not appreciated as much, and our main character Rai and the other girl, they were the most, because Ansel used to do all the hacking stuff, so he was mostly behind the screen and he thought he was not appreciated much. But because we did the field work, we did the heist, we were appreciated. So he tried to backstab us and handed us over to the forces and became the person, the messiah of everyone, of the rich people who were afraid of us, our gang. So the whole story is about how we get back to Ansel, and even we find people who had grudges on Ansel too. So Ansel just didn't snake on us, but seemed like a lot of people. And he talks about how he got the gang, but he betrayed us. He starts writing books and signing his own book copies and becomes a very rich person, but it all is based off of some lies, backstabbing, and betrayal. So, and then even when we find Ansel, how we get to literally rip him off, his ego, his power, you need to spend some diamonds for that. But ultimately, what becomes of Ansel, I think it was the most satisfying outcome that can happen with an antagonist like Ansel, and you get to really give him the payback. And he gets what he deserved because of the betrayal. In chapter 1, the betrayal happens, and at the last chapter, you get to finally deal with Ansel, and I think it was worth it. And Ansel as a villain, the betrayal plot and how he betrayed us, and just every single action he took, every single word he said and did, it was nothing short of a betrayal to our whole crew and main characters throughout the chapters. And I don't think Ansel is one of the characters who I thought has the most punchable face in the whole Choices app, but he was the center light and the main villain of the story, so he's got to be at number 3, one of the best villains. Number 2, Rive from The Elementalist. Rive is the villain. I mean, when the book started, we just dive right into magical world, and then we get attacked, and then we get to learn slowly about the magical world and the dark side, the blood magic. I mean, whenever you hear the name blood magic, the fear, the terror, the horror comes with it. I think Rife, the face they presented Rife with, the voice they gave him, and the way he came up, and we had the final fight, and Rife was presented, it was absolutely worth it. It was a horror genre just because of the blood magic and Rife himself and how he terrored us and the past with our parents. Rife, one of the best villains, and one of the villain that made the Elementalist Book 1 better than Elementalist Book 2, in my opinion. Elementalist Book 2, Kane kind of became like a, like you need to impress him, and he has some good things, bad things, and stuff happens. It was a good, but he was not a gruesome, a fearsome villain like Rife was. Rife really kept the plot together for book one. Like the anticipation of who Rife is first, and you get to know him through blood magic. What happened? Why the blood magic was banned? Practicing blood magic was a crime. How it happened, and the whole anticipation. It became a mystery. It became a horror, and it finally with the magic. It was absolutely awesome. He was creepy. He was the most fearsome figure, I would say. I can even say he is the horror figure, to be honest, because if you talk about in It Lives Beneath, like, I was not that much afraid of Josephine, the main ghost. It Lives Beneath, Mr. Red, I think it was fearsome, but Rife, even though he was not a ghost, but he had the horror de facto to him. Like he was a de facto horror movie villain, Rife from the Elementalist. And number one, we have Everett Rourke from Endless Summer. I mean, Everett Rourke is not one of the, it's probably the best villain, the choices of the antagonist character choices they have ever produced in a book like Endless Summer. And Everett Rourke, just like when I was talking about Silas, he was even a friend of Silas, and he had sort of the same thing. His wife died, and he wanted the control the humanity, to be its supreme leader, and to control not only this world but the whole universe. And you see in different scenes the world, if we let Rourke to be the king of the whole world, the emperor, what would happen that even in spaces, in different space stations, he would have his name signed, and he would be like a supreme king. But how he got his hand dirty, how he manipulated everyone, how he killed or manipulated Leela to steal his mother, and even he didn't give the fatherly love that his own son Alistair deserved. And even that, the biggest revelation of Endless Summer, that Alistair was not a proper human, but all he didn't care about human feelings, but all he cared about that he can control his own destiny. He believed that people can control their own destiny. There will be no loss, there will be no death, and he can go against the nature, the natural law, and he can defy everything and make his own rule. So this was an extreme thought, but again, in retrospect, when you think about Everett Rourke's idea, I mean, for a person who lost his wife at that moment, and even though he did stuff like how his own son Alistair was not a proper human baby but AI, so even Iris, after his wife's death, how he made Iris and other models, but his point of view when he has lost his wife and the way he wanted to see the world, like if you see from Leela's eyes, for instance, you would see Everett Rourke as an ideal person. But when you change perspective, it's nothing but destructive. And he thinks some destructions are needed in terms of, or in order to build the world he craves for, or people crave for. So I think there is just another ambiguous person with high ambitions and some big dreams to capture the world, to change its fate, and to write his own destiny, own fate with his own hand. And the way it is affected, I think this kind of villains, just not some villains like, Celine or Lexi, who are there for just, one thing or the other, some girl, boy, love, or money, but for, theories. Like we had this kind of same sort of views in Bloom. Like if you see from one view, you can, like, depending on some factors, you can agree with them, but when you see from another point of view, or from the greater point of view, they're totally wrong, because going against nature, going against some laws, it's going to hurt them. And the way he manipulates and kills everyone to achieve his goal, it made him the monster. But he was also the mind, and even the greatest mind, which Rourke thinks he is. And if you choose one ending, Rourke can still be the emperor of the world. And then the ending is kind of open, anything can happen. You can again take him down, or it can go otherwise. We never know. So he is the most intriguing villain in choices, and the choices have ever created, Everett Rourke. And now finally, here's a list for villains or antagonists to watch out for, because they didn't really get much time, or they have a sequel to come, or the book is not fully finished. So first one is definitely Martin from Laws of Attraction. Over the course of Laws of Attraction book 1, he's been just a sore loser sometimes, and just once competition and opportunist, and then from being an opportunist he finally grabbed the chance. He's now going to rule over this Meg O'Brien in Sadie's absence, and is going to have his way with Gabe and us, or will it go the other way? So we will see it, but Martin has the possibility and chances to be a villain that we will love as a villainy character, or will we say, yeah, what a lame villain like Selene or some other Queen Bee villains. We will see that. And then another one who I think has the most potential to become one of the top villains is Marcus Blackstock. Even though that model has been used in various other books, his model from Foreign Affairs to others, that's why I have some low hopes that he will be the main villain figure, but anything can happen. Marcus Blackstock from Wake the Dead. Currently non-VIPs are at chapter 4 or 5, and VIPs are at chapter 11, and there is not much of an action we see from Marcus Blackstock after the initial chapters, but we will see as the story progresses that what role he plays, and can he become one of the best villains. But that's so far the list for villains to watch out for. And also, don't forget, Nanny Affair is in queue, so I don't have much expectation in the villain department, but who knows? A lot of people saying Sam's father could be the main antagonist. I don't think so personally. I think it could be Addison. It could be Robin will have a redemption. I'm sure about that. I'm not sure about Sophia. She can have a redemption arc too, both Robin and Sophia, or it can go other way. So that's a wild card there, the Nanny for book 3, even though I have low expectation. If it's Sam's father, it would be one of the biggest plot twists ever. But that's so far about the list to watch out for. Well, that's about it. So that's my top 10 best villains in choices, top 10 best antagonists in choices, and the few antagonists to watch out for from the upcoming sequels or books or chapters. Let me know in the comments your thoughts and opinions and what your list looks like. I'm always curious to look what other players think and what you guys think as to who is your best antagonist in the story. Now, I might have not included some antagonists that you think are absolutely the best antagonists, because I have not read those books, because there are lots of books and choices and I have not read nearly all of them. So definitely do let me know in the comments, and as I read more books, as new books pop in, I will modify this list and some other lists that I have, like side characters or love interest in books, because new books are added. So in the middle of 2022 or 2023 at the start, I will like to modify, because we have books like Cursed Heart, Wake the Dead will be completed, we'll have Surrender, we'll have Crimes of Passion, we'll have Untamable, we have Princess Swap, we'll have Cursed Heart, and new books will come in. So we'll see. So far, the new book schedule looks really good. Only time will tell on that. Let me know in the comments. See you in the next video. Till then, peace out.